At 2:07 in the morning, Diane sat alone at her kitchen table, staring at numbers that should have made her feel safe. A cold cup of coffee sat untouched beside her. Her calculator rested in one hand, while the other scrolled through investment accounts she had already checked 3 times that day. She was 58 years old, and by every normal definition of success, she had won the game. For 31 straight years, Diane worked the same career, not because she loved every minute of it, but because she understood something most people never fully grasp. Consistency quietly builds wealth, while chaos quietly destroys it. While her friends jumped from job to job chasing bigger salaries, Diane stayed steady. Every raise meant a little more went into savings. Every bonus got invested instead of spent. She drove the same car for over a decade, packed her lunch almost every day, ignored trends, skipped expensive upgrades. People joked that she was too careful with money, but over time, the discipline worked. By the time she reached her late 50s, she had built what looked like the perfect financial life. Her house was completely paid off. She had no debt. Her retirement accounts were strong. Friends asked her for advice whenever the market dropped. She was always calm. "I'm investing for the long term," she would say, and she truly believed it. Her goal was simple: retire at 62. That number became the finish line she had spent decades running toward, and eventually she got there. At first, retirement felt incredible. She slept in without guilt, started gardening, took small trips she had postponed for years. She woke up without an alarm clock and felt something she hadn't felt since she was young: freedom. For the first time in decades, her time belonged to her. And then something shifted. Around 8 months into retirement, she started checking her accounts every morning. At first, it seemed harmless, just a quick look, just reassurance. But soon it became a ritual. Morning checks turned into evening checks, then late-night checks. And when the market eventually hit a rough stretch, not even a crash, just a normal correction, it suddenly felt completely different than every downturn she had lived through before. Because during her working years, market declines were just temporary headlines. Her paycheck kept coming. Her investments had time to recover. Now, there was no paycheck. Now, every grocery bill, utility payment, and vacation came directly out of the portfolio she had spent decades building. And for the first time in her life, the number on the screen wasn't only fluctuating because of the market, it was shrinking because she was finally using it. That terrified her. She began waking up in the middle of the night, running calculations in her head. What if inflation stays high? What if the market stays flat for years? What if I live longer than expected? The strange part was that nothing was actually wrong. Her portfolio was healthy. She wasn't close to running out of money. But emotionally, she no longer felt safe. And that fear slowly changed the way she lived. She canceled the Portugal trip she had dreamed about for years, not because she couldn't afford it, because spending the money suddenly felt dangerous. She stopped eating out, delayed replacing things around the house, cut expenses she had already planned for years in advance. She had spent decades preparing for freedom, only to become afraid of using it. And this is the part nobody talks about when they sell the dream of retirement. Some people don't fail retirement financially, they fail it psychologically, because the habits that help them build wealth become the exact habits that stop them from enjoying it. Diane eventually realized something important. For 31 years, she had trained herself to accumulate money. But retirement is not an accumulation problem, it's a distribution problem. Those are completely different games. During your working years, saving more is usually the right decision. Spending less increases security. Watching your accounts grow feels rewarding. But once retirement begins, the goal changes. The money is supposed to support your life now, and if you never mentally adapt, you can spend your healthiest years protecting money you may never actually need.
That realization hit Diane hard. Every $500 she refused to spend wasn't just money staying invested. It was a dinner with family that never happened, a memory she delayed, a version of life she spent decades postponing. And unlike money, time doesn't compound. Once those years are gone, they're gone forever. What made everything worse was something most retirees never fully understand until they experience it themselves: sequence of returns risk. And despite the complicated name, the idea is simple. Imagine two people retiring with the exact same amount of money invested, the exact same way. One person retires right before a bad market period. The other retires right before a strong bull market. Even if the average returns over 30 years end up identical, their outcomes can be completely different. Why? Because when markets fall early in retirement, retirees are forced to withdraw money while their portfolio is already down. They end up selling investments at lower prices just to cover normal living expenses. Those shares never get the chance to recover later. That damage compounds quietly in the background. Meanwhile, the person who gets strong returns early allows their portfolio to grow before major downturns arrive. Same average return, completely different outcome. And none of it has anything to do with intelligence or discipline. It's timing. That realization changed how Diane thought about retirement completely. She stopped obsessing over the size of her portfolio and started focusing on structure instead. She built what financial planners sometimes call a cash runway, several years of living expenses held outside the market. That way, if stocks dropped, she wouldn't be forced to sell investments at the worst possible moment. She also created rules ahead of time instead of making emotional decisions during stressful periods. If the market dropped significantly, she would temporarily reduce discretionary spending. Not out of panic, simply because the rule already existed. No guessing, no fear-driven decisions. And most importantly, she stopped viewing retirement as a hard stop. Instead of fully disconnecting from work forever, she took on occasional consulting projects a few times each year, nothing overwhelming, just enough income to reduce pressure on her investments during the vulnerable early retirement years. That small shift changed everything psychologically, because suddenly retirement no longer felt fragile, it felt flexible, and flexibility creates peace of mind. Eventually, Diane realized she had spent years asking the wrong question. She kept asking, "How much money do I need?" But the more important question was, "How does my system behave once I actually start living on it?" Those are not the same thing. A massive portfolio without emotional structure can still create anxiety, but a flexible, well-designed system creates confidence. Once Diane understood that, her life slowly changed. She finally booked the Portugal trip. Not recklessly, not irresponsibly. She booked it because she finally trusted the system she had spent decades building. Today, Diane is 65 years old. She still checks her accounts sometimes, but now she checks them the same way someone checks the weather forecast, casually, without fear. Her investments still move up and down, the market still fluctuates, but her life no longer fluctuates with it. And maybe that's the real definition of financial freedom. Not having the biggest number, not becoming endlessly wealthy, but building a system strong enough that you can finally stop thinking about money every hour of every day. Because in the end, retirement was never supposed to be about staring at a screen full of numbers. It was supposed to be about reclaiming your mornings, your time, your peace, your ability to say yes to life without running calculations first. Diane spent 31 years building that freedom, and now, finally, she's allowing herself to live it. This is Net Plus, where money stops being a mystery and becomes a language you finally understand. Hit subscribe for more deep dive lessons that actually stick.